The moment Garrett Xavier saw her curled against the whitewashed church doors, his heart seized in a way he had never experienced in all his 27 years riding across the Western Territories. The girl looked barely conscious, her dark hair tangled around shoulders clad in a dress so torn and dusty it might have once been blue, and her bare feet were bloody from what must have been miles of walking through the unforgiving New Mexico landscape. It was late spring in 1878, and Silver City had just started to quiet down after another raucous Saturday night, the kind where miners spent their weekly wages on whiskey and card games, while respectable folks locked their doors and pretended not to hear the chaos spilling from the saloons. Garrett had been heading to check on his horses at the livery when he spotted her. The dawn light painted everything gold and pink, making the scene almost dreamlike, but the reality of her situation hit him hard and fast. She was young, maybe 19 or 20, and clearly in desperate straits. He approached carefully, his boots scuffing against the dirt to announce his presence so he would not startle her. "Miss." His voice came out rougher than intended, gravelly from disuse. "Miss, are you all right?" She did not respond, and when he knelt beside her, he could see the shallow rise and fall of her chest, the way her chapped lips were parted slightly. Dehydration, exhaustion, possibly hunger. He had seen men in similar states after getting lost in the desert, and it never ended well if someone did not intervene quickly. Without overthinking it, Garrett scooped her into his arms. She weighed almost nothing, all bone and sinew beneath that ruined dress. Her head lolled against his chest, and he could feel her heartbeat, rapid and weak like a trapped bird. He shifted her weight and started walking, not toward the doctor's office where questions would be asked and gossip would spread like wildfire, but toward his own place at the edge of town. His ranch was modest, a simple house he had built with his own hands after years of working cattle drives and saving every penny. It sat on 20 acres of decent grazing land with a small creek running through the property. The house itself was sturdy, with 2 bedrooms, a main living area with a kitchen, and a covered porch that faced the mountains. It was not much, but it was his, and right now, it was exactly what this girl needed. He kicked open the door and carried her straight to his bedroom, laying her gently on the bed he had made himself from pine lumber. The quilts were clean, washed just 2 days ago, and he pulled them up over her trembling form. Her eyes fluttered but did not open, and he noticed now that her face was sunburned, the delicate skin across her nose and cheeks angry and red. "This is your home," he said quietly, even though she probably could not hear him. The words felt right, felt necessary, as if speaking them made them true. "You are safe here." He left her for a moment to fetch water and clean cloths, his mind racing through everything he would need to do. When he returned, he dampened one of the cloths and carefully began cleaning the dirt from her face, working with a gentleness that would have surprised anyone who knew him as the hard-edged rancher who rarely smiled and kept to himself. As he worked, he noticed details. A small scar above her left eyebrow, the way her dark lashes cast shadows on her cheeks, the surprising strength in her jawline despite her current fragility. She was beautiful, he realized, though that was hardly the most important thing at the moment. It took nearly an hour to clean her up as much as he dared without impropriety. He washed her face, hands, and feet, the latter making him wince at the cuts and blisters covering them. He applied salve from his medicine kit, the same stuff he used on his horses, but it was good for wounds and would help. Then he tried to get her to drink, supporting her head and letting water dribble past her lips a little at a time. "Come on," he murmured. "Just a little more." To his relief, her throat worked, swallowing reflexively. After several attempts, she had managed perhaps half a cup. It was a start. Garrett pulled a chair next to the bed and sat, watching her breathe, waiting for any sign of consciousness. Outside, he could hear Silver City coming to life, the distant sounds of voices and wagons, a dog barking, someone hammering at the blacksmith shop. Normal Sunday morning sounds. Meanwhile, in his bedroom, nothing about this situation was normal. He thought about the questions that would come. Who was she? Where had she come from? What had happened to leave her in such a state? But more than curiosity, he felt a fierce protectiveness rising in his chest, an instinct that told him this girl was now his responsibility, and he would be damned if he let anything else happen to her. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher and the room grew warm. Garrett opened the window to let in a breeze, then returned to his vigil. He should have been working, should have been checking fence lines and tending to the cattle, but he could not bring himself to leave her alone. It was nearly noon when her eyes finally opened. They were remarkable eyes, he noted immediately, a deep brown that caught the light like polished mahogany. They were also filled with confusion and fear as they darted around the unfamiliar room before landing on him. She tried to sit up, gasping, and he held up both hands in what he hoped was a calming gesture. "Easy now," he said. "You are safe. I found you at the church this morning. You were in bad shape, so I brought you here." "Where?" Her voice was barely a whisper, hoarse and painful sounding. "My home. My ranch just outside Silver City. I am Garrett Xavier. What is your name?" She stared at him for a long moment, and he could see her trying to decide whether to trust him. Finally, she spoke. Zara Richardson." "Well, Miss Richardson, can you tell me what happened to you?" Tears welled in her eyes, and she looked away. "Water, please." He quickly poured more water from the pitcher and helped her drink. She took it more eagerly now, fully conscious, draining the entire cup before falling back against the pillows. "Thank you," she whispered. "Do you have family I should contact, someone who will be worried about you?" The tears spilled over then, tracking down her cheeks. "No, nobody, they are all gone." Garrett felt his chest tighten. "I am sorry." "Why did you help me?" The question came out small, confused. "You do not know me." "You needed help. That is reason enough." She studied him with those remarkable eyes, and he felt exposed in a way that made him uncomfortable. He was not used to people looking at him like that, like they were trying to see past all his carefully constructed walls. "I cannot pay you," she said. "I have nothing." "I did not ask you to pay me." He stood, suddenly needing distance. "You should rest. Are you hungry?" Her stomach answered for her, growling loudly enough that they both heard it. A faint flush colored her cheeks. "I will take that as a yes. Let me make something." He left her there and went to the kitchen, grateful for something practical to do. He was not much of a cook, but he could manage the basics. He started coffee, then put together a simple meal of eggs, bread, and some of the bacon he had fried up earlier that morning. As he worked, he tried to process everything. A girl with no family, nothing to her name, showing up half dead on church steps. It spoke of tragedy, of loss, of circumstances he could only imagine. The decent thing would be to help her get back on her feet, maybe find her a job in town, send her on her way. That was what any reasonable person would do. But when he brought the food back to the bedroom and saw her sitting up against the headboard, looking small and lost in his big bed, wearing his spare nightshirt that he had left for her, something in his chest shifted permanently. "This is your home," he had said, and he had meant it in a way he was only beginning to understand. "Here." He set the tray across her lap. "Eat slowly. Your stomach probably is not used to much right now." She picked up the fork with shaking hands and took a small bite of egg. The expression that crossed her face was almost painful to watch, relief and hunger and gratitude all mixed together. "When did you last eat?" he asked, 3 days ago, maybe 4, I lost track. Where did you come from? She was quiet for a moment, chewing slowly. Sakuro. It is about 60 miles northeast of here. There was a fire. The boarding house where I worked, it burned down. The owner, Mrs. Fletcher, she died in the fire along with 2 of the other girls who worked there. I got out, but I had nothing. No money, no belongings. The town, they blamed us for the fire even though it started in the kitchen, something with the stove. They said we were careless, said we were a blight on the community. Garrett knew what kind of boarding house she meant. Places where young women worked as servants, cleaning and cooking and sometimes more, depending on how desperate they were. He kept his expression neutral. So you walked here. I did not know where else to go. I heard Silver City was bigger, thought maybe I could find work. But by the time I got here, I was so tired and my feet hurt so much, and I saw the church and thought maybe I could just rest for a minute. She looked down at the plate. I do not really remember anything after that until I woke up here. You are lucky you did not die out there. This country does not forgive mistakes. Maybe it would have been better if I had. The bleakness in her voice made him angry, though not at her. Do not say that. Why not? What do I have to live for? I have no one, nothing. I will end up in another boarding house or worse, until I die or get too old to be useful. That is just the truth of it. Garrett sat down in the chair again, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. What if I told you it did not have to be that way? She looked at him warily. What do you mean? I mean, you could stay here. Work for me if you want to call it that. I need help around the ranch. Cooking, mending, keeping house. It is not glamorous work, but it is honest. You would have a roof over your head, food in your belly, and nobody would bother you. Nobody would judge you. Why would you do that? You do not even know me. I know enough. I know you are strong enough to walk 60 miles through rough country. I know you are a survivor. That counts for something. And what would you expect in return? The question was pointed, her eyes hardening. He understood what she was asking. Nothing except honest work. You would have your own room, your own space. This would be an arrangement of employment, nothing more. Unless you decided you wanted it to be something different, but that would be entirely your choice. She studied him again, and he let her look, let her see whatever she needed to see to feel safe. Finally, she nodded slowly. All right, I will stay, at least for a while. Until I can figure out something else. Fair enough. He stood. For now, you should rest. Eat everything on that plate if you can manage it, then sleep. We can talk more about the details when you are feeling better. He left her alone then, closing the door softly behind him. Only when he was in the main room did he let out the breath he had been holding. What had he just done? Invited a stranger to live with him, offered her a home without knowing anything real about her. It was impulsive, reckless even, completely unlike his usual careful nature. But it also felt right in a way he could not explain. From the moment he had seen her on those church steps, something had changed inside him. He had spent years building his life here, working towards stability and security, but it had all felt hollow somehow. Empty. And now, with Zara Richardson sleeping in his bed, the house felt different. More alive. He went outside to do the chores he had neglected all morning, working with methodical efficiency to make up for lost time. The physical labor helped clear his mind, and by the time the sun was setting and he was done, he had convinced himself that he had simply done a charitable thing and nothing more. She would recover, work for him for a few months, and then move on. That was how these things went. But when he came back inside and checked on her, finding her sleeping peacefully with color returning to her cheeks, he knew he was lying to himself. 3 days passed before Zara was strong enough to get out of bed for more than brief periods. Garrett had moved his things to the second bedroom, insisting she keep the larger one with the better window. He brought her meals, changed the dressings on her feet, and kept his distance otherwise, giving her space to heal. She slept most of the time, her body recovering from the ordeal. When she was awake, they talked in brief, careful exchanges. She told him about growing up in Texas, about losing her parents to fever when she was 16, about bouncing from town to town trying to find work. He told her about his years on cattle drives, about saving enough to buy this land, about building the house with his own 2 hands. What he did not tell her was how he found himself thinking about her constantly, even when he was out working. How he looked forward to bringing her meals just to see her face. How the sound of her voice, still raspy but getting stronger, did something strange to his insides. On the 4th day, she appeared in the kitchen doorway while he was making breakfast. She was wearing the dress he had washed and mended as best he could, though it was still pretty threadbare. Her hair was pulled back in a simple braid and she looked nervous. "Morning," she said. "I figured it was time I started earning my keep. You should rest more. Your feet are still healing." "I have rested enough. I feel useless just lying around." She moved into the kitchen, limping slightly. "Let me help." "What needs doing?" He wanted to argue, but the determined set of her jaw told him it would be pointless. "All right. You can start by making the coffee. The pot is there, beans in that tin. I will finish the eggs." They worked in silence, navigating around each other in the small kitchen space. It should have been awkward, but somehow it was not. When they sat down to eat at the small table, it felt strangely domestic, comfortable in a way that surprised them both. "This is a nice place you have," she said. "Must have taken a lot of work." 5 years of saving, another year to build, still needs things. "I keep meaning to put up proper curtains and the porch could use railings." "I could make curtains. If you have fabric somewhere, or I could use old sheets maybe." "You do not have to do that. I want to. You have done so much for me. Let me contribute something," he nodded, conceding. "There is a trunk in the back room with some fabric my mother sent me years ago. I never knew what to do with it. You are welcome to it." After breakfast, she insisted on cleaning up despite his protests. He watched her move around his kitchen, putting things in order, and felt that strange sensation in his chest again, like something was settling into place. The days began to develop a rhythm. Garrett would wake before dawn and do the morning chores while Zara made breakfast. They would eat together, then he would head out to work the ranch while she tackled indoor tasks. She proved to be resourceful and hardworking, transforming his bachelor dwelling into something that felt more like a real home. She made curtains from the fabric in the trunk, stitched the holes in his spare clothes, organized his chaotic pantry, and cooked meals that were far better than anything he had ever managed on his own. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch and talk, watching the sun set behind the mountains. These conversations started simple, discussing plans for the next day or observations about the weather, but gradually grew deeper. She told him about her dreams of having a real home someday, a garden of her own, maybe children. He talked about his plans for the ranch, wanting to build it into something substantial, a legacy. "You ever get lonely out here?" she asked one night about 2 weeks after her arrival. "I did," he admitted. "I got used to it though, told myself I preferred the solitude. And now—" He looked at her, at the way the fading light caught in her hair, at the gentle curve of her profile. "Now I am not so sure." She met his eyes and something passed between them, some acknowledgement of the thing that was building but neither was ready to name. She looked away first, biting her lip. "I should probably head into town soon," she said quietly. "Get some proper clothes, maybe look for additional work. I cannot just live off your charity forever." "It is not charity. You work harder than any ranch hand I have ever hired." "Still, people will talk." A woman living alone with a man, no family, no real arrangement, you know how it is. He did know. Small towns thrived on gossip, and Silver City was no exception. But the thought of her leaving, even just to find other work, made his stomach clench. "Let them talk," he said. "But if you want to go to town, I will take you. You should not walk that far, not with your feet still tender." "All right. Thank you." They went to Silver City the next day, Garrett driving his wagon with Zara beside him. She wore the best dress she had, which was not saying much, and he could see her nervousness as they approached the town. He understood it. A young woman with no reputation, no background that anyone knew, arriving with a man who kept to himself. The gossips would have a field day. Their first stop was the general store. Mrs. Patterson, who ran it with her husband, looked Zara up and down with barely disguised curiosity. "Well, Garrett Xavier, I did not expect to see you in town today," she said, her eyes never leaving Zara. "And with company, no less. Mrs. Patterson." "This is Miss Richardson. She is working for me at the ranch." "Is that so?" The woman's tone dripped with implications. "Working for you, how nice." Zara lifted her chin. "I need fabric for a dress if you have any, and thread, needles, whatever else might be practical." "You sew, do you?" "I do many things, madam. I work hard for my keep." Something in Zara's steady gaze made Mrs. Patterson back down slightly. "Well, I have fabric in the back. Come look." While Zara shopped, Garrett stood near the door, acutely aware of the stares and whispers. "Let them talk," he had said, but he hated the idea of Zara being subjected to their judgment. She had done nothing wrong, nothing to deserve their scorn. She selected modest fabric in practical colors, clearly choosing based on utility rather than preference. When she tried to pay with the small amount of money Garrett had given her earlier, he stepped in. "Put it on my account." "Garrett, no, I can pay. You are working for me. This counts as supplies. Put it on my account, Mrs. Patterson." The older woman looked between them, her expression calculating, but she nodded. "As you wish." They made a few more stops, getting supplies Garrett needed and a few things for Zara. At each place, they received similar treatment, that mix of curiosity and judgment that made Garrett's jaw tight with anger. Zara handled it with remarkable grace, keeping her head high and her responses polite but firm. On the way back, she was quiet, staring at the landscape rolling past them. "I am sorry," he said. "People here can be small-minded. It is not your fault. I am used to it. Being poor, being alone, it makes you invisible or it makes you a target, sometimes both." She turned to look at him. "But you were not like them. You saw me, really saw me. I am grateful for that." "You should not have to be grateful for basic human decency." She smiled, sad and knowing. "But I am anyway." Back at the ranch, she threw herself into sewing, working by lamplight to create new dresses. Garrett found himself watching her more than he should, admiring the concentration on her face, the quick efficiency of her hands. She caught him staring once and raised an eyebrow. "Something wrong?" "No, just thinking you look different now than when I found you." "I should hope so." "I was half dead then." "That is not what I meant. You look stronger, more yourself." She set down her sewing. "I feel more myself. You gave me that. This place, this chance, it is more than I ever expected to have. You did the hard part. You survived. We both did, I think." She stood, moving closer to where he sat. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Why are you really alone out here? A man like you, with property and prospects, you could have married, had a family by now. Why did you not?" He was quiet for a long moment, considering his answer. "I guess I never found anyone who fit. The women in town, they are fine enough, but they want things I cannot give them. They want social standing, want to climb ladders I have no interest in. And the ones who would be willing to live this kind of life, they never felt right, never felt like home." "And what feels like home?" He looked up at her, standing there in the lamplight with her dark eyes full of questions. This, right now, you being here, it feels like home. The air between them changed, charged with everything they had been carefully not saying. Zara's breath caught, and he could see the conflict on her face, the desire warring with caution. Garrett, I cannot be just another mouth to feed, another obligation. I will not be a burden. He stood, closing the distance between them until he could see the flecks of gold in her brown eyes. You are not a burden. You are the first thing in my life that has felt right in longer than I can remember. I know it is fast. I know we barely know each other, but I cannot pretend I do not feel this. I cannot pretend you are just someone who works for me. What are you saying? I am saying I want you to stay. Not as an employee, not as a charity case. I want you to stay because you want to be here, because this is your home. He paused, gathering courage. Because you might feel the same way I do. And how do you feel? Like I have been waiting for you my whole life without knowing it. Like finding you on those church steps was the most important thing I have ever done. He reached up carefully and touched her cheek. Like I am falling in love with you. Tears welled in her eyes. I am scared. Everything I have ever cared about I lost. My parents, my home, everything. What if I lose this too? What if you do not? What if we build something together that lasts? Is not that worth the risk? She leaned into his touch, her eyes closing. I feel it too. I have been trying not to, trying to protect myself, but I feel it. When you walk in the door at the end of the day, my heart jumps. When you smile at something I have said, I feel warm all over. I think about you all the time and it terrifies me. Then be terrified with me, he whispered. Be brave with me. She opened her eyes and looked at him, really looked at him, and he could see the moment she made her choice. She rose up on her toes and kissed him, soft and tentative and perfect. He wrapped his arms around her, pulling her close, kissing her back with all the feeling he had been holding inside. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, she rested her forehead against his chest. This is crazy, she murmured. Probably. We barely know each other. We will learn. The whole town will be scandalized. Let them be. He tilted her chin up. Marry me, Zara. Make this real. Make this home ours. Her eyes widened. You want to marry me after 3 weeks? I wanted to marry you after 3 days. I just knew it was too soon to say so. But yes, I want to marry you. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep beside you every night. I want to build a life with you, have children with you if you are willing. I want everything, all of it with you. She laughed, a sound of pure joy that made his heart soar. Yes. Yes, you insane man, I will marry you. He kissed her again, deeper this time, and she melted against him. Everything felt right, felt perfect, like all the scattered pieces of his life had suddenly aligned. They were married 2 weeks later in the same church where he had found her. The ceremony was simple, attended by only a handful of people Garrett knew from town, including the preacher and his wife. Mrs. Patterson came, more out of curiosity than goodwill, but Garrett did not care. All that mattered was Zara in a new dress she had sewn herself, cream-colored with delicate embroidery at the collar, her hand in his as they spoke their vows. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Garrett kissed her with such enthusiasm that a few people in the small congregation chuckled. Zara blushed but kissed him back, her hands fisting in his shirt. "Hello, Mrs. Xavier," he murmured against her lips. "Hello, husband." They spent their wedding night at the ranch, in the bed where she had first woken up in his home. Garrett was gentle with her, taking his time, learning her body with reverent attention. She was nervous at first, admitting this was new territory for her despite what people might assume about girls who worked in boarding houses. He promised to take care of her, and he did, bringing her pleasure before his own, holding her close afterward as she trembled in his arms. "I love you," she whispered in the darkness. "I know I have not said it yet, but I do. I love you, Garrett Xavier. I love you too, Zara, more than I knew I could love anyone." The following months were the happiest Garrett had ever known. Zara transformed not just his house but his entire life. She planted a garden, coaxing vegetables and flowers from the earth with determination and care. She befriended the ranch animals, giving them all names and treating them like pets. She sang while she worked, filling the house with music that made his chest ache with contentment. They worked the ranch together, Zara proving surprisingly adept at handling livestock and mending fences. She rode horses fearlessly, worked alongside him during branding season, and never complained about the hard physical labor. In the evenings, they would wash up and sit together on the porch, her head on his shoulder, talking about their dreams for the future. "I want lots of children," she said one night. "At least 4, maybe more. I want this house to be full of life and noise and love." "4 sounds good to me," he agreed, kissing the top of her head. "We should probably get started on that." She laughed and swatted his chest. "I think we have been getting started on it plenty. I am nothing if not dedicated to the task. I have noticed." As autumn arrived, painting the landscape in gold and crimson, Zara began to show signs of pregnancy. She glowed with it, her happiness evident in every smile and gesture. Garrett became almost comically protective, insisting she rest more and do less of the heavy work. She tolerated his fussing with good-natured patience, though she drew the line when he tried to stop her from riding horses. "I am pregnant, not made of glass," she informed him. "Women have been doing hard work while carrying babies since the beginning of time. I will be fine." "I know, I just worry." "Worry quietly then and let me live my life." He loved her fierceness, loved the way she refused to be diminished by anything. She had been through so much, lost so much, but she faced the world with courage and determination that inspired him daily. The town's attitude toward them began to shift as well. Married respectably and working their ranch with obvious success, they became harder to gossip about. Mrs. Patterson even started being somewhat friendly, asking after Zara's health and offering unsolicited advice about childbearing. Zara accepted it all with grace, never holding grudges or throwing their earlier treatment back at them. "Kindness costs nothing," she told Garrett when he grumbled about the town's hypocrisy. "And I would rather live peacefully than carry anger. You are a better person than I am." "No, I am just tired of fighting. I want to build things now, not tear them down." Their first child was born in late spring of 1879, delivered by the doctor from town with Garrett pacing anxiously outside until he heard the baby's cry. When the doctor finally let him in, he found Zara exhausted but radiant, cradling a red-faced, squalling infant against her chest. "We have a son," she said, her voice full of wonder. "Garrett, we have a son." He knelt beside the bed, gently touching the baby's impossibly tiny hand. The infant's fingers wrapped around his thumb, gripping with surprising strength, and Garrett felt his throat tighten with emotion. "He is perfect," he whispered. "You are both perfect." They named him Gabriel, and he became the center of their world. Garrett had never imagined he could love anything as much as he loved that boy, watching him grow and develop a personality all his own. Gabriel had Zara's dark eyes and Garrett's stubborn chin, and he was curious about everything, reaching for things, trying to put everything in his mouth. Zara took to motherhood naturally, though she admitted to Garrett in private moments that she was often terrified she would do something wrong. He reassured her constantly, and together, they learned how to navigate parenthood, making mistakes and celebrating victories. When Gabriel was a year old, Zara found out she was pregnant again. This time, the pregnancy was harder, leaving her sick and exhausted for months. Garrett hired a woman from town to help with housework and childcare, insisting Zara rest despite her protests. She spent much of her time in bed or on the porch, watching Gabriel toddle around the yard while her belly grew heavy with their second child. "I feel useless," she complained one afternoon. "I should be helping more. You are growing our child. That is not useless. That is everything." "You always know what to say." "I just tell the truth." Their daughter was born in early 1881, a tiny, furious creature who came into the world screaming and never really stopped. They named her Emma, and she proved to be the opposite of her calm, thoughtful brother. Where Gabriel had been easy, Emma was difficult, crying constantly, refusing to sleep, demanding attention every moment. Zara nursed her through exhaustion, and Garrett walked the floor with her for hours, singing off key lullabies that sometimes, miraculously, worked. "I love her desperately," Zara said one night after finally getting Emma to sleep. "But I also want to sell her to passing traders." Garrett laughed quietly. "I will give you $5 for her. Deal." Despite the challenges, or perhaps because of them, their family grew closer. Gabriel became a surprisingly helpful big brother, fetching things for his mother and trying to soothe Emma when she cried. The ranch continued to prosper, Garrett's hard work and smart decisions paying off as his herd grew, and his reputation for quality cattle spread throughout the territory. By 1883, they had added another room to the house, anticipating the arrival of their third child. This pregnancy was easier than the second but harder than the first, and Zara spent a lot of time thinking about how much their lives had changed in just 5 years. "Do you ever think about that morning?" she asked Garrett one evening. "When you found me at the church, all the time. Do you ever regret it? Taking me in, changing your whole life." He pulled her close, his hand resting on her swollen belly where their child kicked and moved. "Not for a single second. That was the day my real life started. Everything before that was just waiting. I was so scared that day. I thought I was going to die, and I was not even sure I cared. Everything seemed so hopeless. And now—" She looked around at their home, at Gabriel and Emma playing on the floor, at the life they had built together. "Now I cannot imagine anything better. You saved me, Garrett, in every way a person can be saved. We saved each other, I think." Their third child, another boy they named Samuel, was born healthy and relatively easy. He fell somewhere between his siblings in temperament, not as calm as Gabriel but not as demanding as Emma. The house was chaos most days, full of children's laughter and tears, toys scattered everywhere, laundry that never seemed to end. But it was the chaos Zara had dreamed of, the full, noisy, loving home she had wanted. Garrett expanded the ranch operations, hiring a couple of hands to help with the increased workload. He built a proper barn, added more fencing, and bought breeding stock that improved his herd significantly. The Xavier Ranch became known throughout New Mexico as a reliable source for quality cattle, and their financial situation became comfortable, even prosperous. As the children grew, Zara made sure they understood gratitude and hard work. She told them stories about her own childhood, about the importance of kindness and resilience. Gabriel, in particular, seemed to understand something special about his parents' story, the way his mother spoke about the day his father found her. "Papa saved Mama," he told Emma and Samuel one day when he was about 8 years old. "She was all alone and he brought her home." "That is part of the story," Zara corrected gently. "But your father and I saved each other. That is what love does. It saves us." The years passed quickly, marked by the rhythms of ranch life and the milestones of their children's growth. Gabriel grew tall and serious, already showing signs of the man he would become. Emma remained spirited and strong-willed, constantly testing boundaries and making her parents laugh with her antics. Samuel was the peacemaker, gentle and thoughtful, often finding compromises when his siblings fought. In 1887, Zara discovered she was pregnant again, a surprise since they had assumed their family was complete. She was 31 now, Garrett 39, and the idea of starting over with a newborn was both exciting and daunting. "We are getting too old for this," she joked, though her eyes were happy. "Speak for yourself. I am in my prime. Your prime needs to help with midnight feedings. I have never missed one yet." That was true. Through all 4 pregnancies and births, Garrett had been present and involved, never treating childcare as solely Zara's responsibility. He changed diapers, soothed crying babies, and got up for nighttime needs without complaint. It was one of the many things she loved about him. Their 4th child, another daughter they named Rose, was born in early 1888. She came into the world quietly, with none of Emma's dramatics, and immediately became everyone's favorite. Even Emma, who had been jealous at first, melted when Rose wrapped tiny fingers around hers. The house was truly full now, bursting at the seams with life and love. Mealtimes were loud, chaotic affairs with everyone talking over each other. Bedtimes involved complicated rotations of stories and songs. The laundry was endless, the dishes constant, the demands never ending. And Zara had never been happier. One evening, after finally getting all 4 children to bed, Zara and Garrett collapsed onto the porch swing, exhausted but content. The stars were bright overhead, the air cool and clean, the sounds of the ranch settling down for the night familiar and comforting. "Do you remember what you said to me that first day?" Zara asked. "When you brought me here, I said a lot of things. You said this is your home. I was barely conscious, but I heard it. I remember thinking it was such a strange thing to say to someone you did not know. I meant it, though." "I know, I think part of me knew then, too. It felt true, even when nothing else made sense." He pulled her closer. 10 years ago this month I found you. Has it really been 10 years? 10 years, 4 children, and more happiness than I ever imagined possible." She turned to kiss him, soft and sweet and full of the love they had built together. "Thank you for seeing me, for bringing me home. Thank you for staying, for making this a home." They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the stars and listening to the night. Inside, their children slept safely, dreaming their own dreams. The ranch sprawled around them, testament to years of hard work and dedication. And at the center of it all was the love story that had started with a desperate girl on church steps and a man brave enough to offer her everything. As years continued to pass, the Xavier family became a fixture in Silver City and the surrounding area. Gabriel, their eldest, grew into a capable young man who took on more responsibility at the ranch. By 16, he was essentially Garrett's right hand, helping with the business decisions and managing the hired hands with surprising maturity. He had his father's steady nature and his mother's compassionate heart, a combination that served him well. Emma, true to form, remained a force of nature. At 14, she was already catching the eyes of boys in town, though she had no patience for their awkward attempts at courtship. She was more interested in learning to shoot and rope cattle, often competing with Gabriel to see who could do things better. Zara worried sometimes about Emma's refusal to embrace more traditional feminine pursuits, but Garrett reminded her that their daughter was simply finding her own way, just as Zara had done. Samuel, at 12, was proving to be academically inclined. He loved books and learning, often reading late into the night by lamplight despite being told to sleep. Garrett and Zara talked about possibly sending him to school back east eventually, though the idea of any of their children leaving was painful to contemplate. Rose, at 6, was still the baby of the family and reveled in the role. She had everyone wrapped around her tiny finger, especially her father, who struggled to deny her anything. Zara often had to intervene, reminding Garrett that spoiling Rose would do her no favors in the long run. The ranch had grown substantially. Garrett now ran nearly 1,000 head of cattle across expanded grazing lands. He had built additional structures, including a proper bunkhouse for the half-dozen men who worked for them year-round. The original house had been expanded twice to accommodate their growing family, with new bedrooms and even a separate parlor. But despite their success and prosperity, Garrett and Zara never forgot their beginnings. They were generous with those less fortunate, often hiring drifters who needed work and paying fair wages. When a family in town lost everything to illness, Zara organized a community effort to help them, contributing food and supplies from their own stores. The church that had sheltered Zara that fateful morning received regular donations from the Xaviers, allowing them to help others in similar circumstances. One spring morning in 1894, a young woman appeared at their door. She was thin and dirty, her clothes ragged, her eyes full of desperation. She asked if they had any work, any way she could earn a meal and a place to sleep. Zara looked at the girl, seeing herself 16 years earlier, and felt her heart clench. She glanced at Garrett, who was already nodding. "Come inside," Zara said gently. "Let us get you cleaned up and fed. Then we will talk about work." The girl, whose name was Jenny, broke down crying with relief. Gabriel, who had been watching from the doorway, helped her inside while Emma ran to prepare a bath. Samuel fetched clean clothes, and Rose simply held the stranger's hand, offering silent comfort. Later that night, after Jenny was settled in the guest room and the children were in bed, Zara and Garrett sat on their porch as they had countless times before. "That could have been me," Zara said quietly. "If you had not found me, if you had not cared, I could have ended up anywhere. Dead, probably. But you did not, and now we can help someone else the way I helped you." "The way we helped each other," she corrected, as she always did. He smiled. "The way we helped each other." Jenny stayed with them for 3 months, working in the house and helping Zara with the endless tasks that came with running a large household. She gained weight, color returned to her cheeks, and slowly she began to smile. When she eventually moved on, it was to take a position as a schoolteacher in a nearby town, a respectable job that would give her independence and security. She wrote to the Xaviers regularly, always beginning her letters with thanks for saving her life. "That is your legacy," Garrett told Zara after receiving one of Jenny's letters. "Not just our children, but all the people you have helped along the way." "Our legacy," she corrected. "I learned compassion from you, from the way you saw me when I was invisible to everyone else." Gabriel married at 22, choosing a strong, capable woman named Helen who fit seamlessly into the ranch life. They built a house on the Xavier property, and Gabriel took over more of the day-to-day operations, allowing Garrett to slow down slightly as he approached 50. The continuity pleased Garrett immensely, knowing the ranch would stay in the family, would continue to thrive under Gabriel's management. Emma shocked everyone by falling in love with a quiet, bookish lawyer from town. She was 19, and her beau was everything she usually claimed to despise: refined, educated, more comfortable with words than action. But something about him balanced her wild spirit, and when they married, it was clear to everyone that they adored each other completely. Samuel did eventually go east for school, studying literature and philosophy at a university in Boston. It was hard for Zara to let him go, but she understood his need to explore the wider world. He wrote home regularly, sharing his experiences and ideas, promising to return eventually, though none of them knew when that might be. Rose remained at home, the last child under their roof. At 14, she showed signs of artistic talent, spending hours drawing and painting the landscape around the ranch. Garrett had a small studio built for her, a place where she could work without interruption, pursuing her passion the way her siblings had pursued theirs. As Garrett approached his 60th birthday in 1898, he and Zara found themselves entering a new phase of life. They were grandparents now, Gabriel and Helen having provided them with 2 grandsons. The house that had once been full of their own children's noise now echoed with the laughter of the next generation. One evening, sitting in their usual spot on the porch, Zara rested her head on Garrett's shoulder and sighed contentedly. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "Everything. All of it. 20 years ago, I was dying on church steps, completely alone and hopeless. And now look at all this. Our children, our grandchildren, this beautiful life we built. It feels impossible sometimes, like I am going to wake up and find it was all a dream. It is real. We made it real. Do you ever wish things had been different? That you had married someone from town, someone respectable with a proper background?" He turned to look at her, cupping her face in his weathered hands. "Not once. Not ever. You are the love of my life, Zara Xavier. Finding you was the greatest blessing I ever received. Everything good in my life traces back to that morning." She kissed him, deep and lingering, with all the passion that 20 years of marriage had not diminished. "I love you. I will love you until the day I die and beyond. I love you too. Always." They sat together as the sun set, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink. From inside the house, they could hear Rose singing while she painted, her voice clear and sweet. From the direction of Gabriel's house, they could hear children playing. The ranch sprawled around them, testament to decades of hard work and love. "This is your home," Garrett had said 20 years ago, and he had been right. It was her home, their home, a place built on the foundation of an impulsive act of kindness that had blossomed into something neither of them could have imagined. The years continued their march forward, bringing changes and challenges as all years do. Samuel returned from the East in 1902 with a wife, a refined woman from Philadelphia who gamely adapted to ranch life, despite being completely unprepared for it. Rose married a rancher from a neighboring property, merging their lands and creating one of the largest cattle operations in New Mexico. Garrett's health began to decline as he entered his 60s. Nothing dramatic, but the accumulated wear of a life spent doing hard physical labor. He developed a limp from an old injury that had never quite healed right, and his hands grew stiff with arthritis. Zara nursed him through these ailments with patient devotion, just as he had nursed her back to health all those years ago. "We are getting old," he observed one morning, watching her braid her hair, now streaked with silver. "Speak for yourself." "I am aging like fine wine," he laughed. "That you are." They watched their grandchildren grow, teaching them about the ranch, about hard work and integrity, about the importance of kindness. Gabriel's sons were joined by a daughter. Emma had 3 children who visited regularly. Samuel had twin boys who were holy terrors, and Rose was expecting her first. The Xavier name was spreading, creating roots that would extend for generations. On their 25th wedding anniversary in 1903, their children organized a celebration at the ranch. Nearly 100 people attended, filling the property with music and laughter. There was dancing and food, stories and toasts, a recognition of the legacy Garrett and Zara had built together. When it was Garrett's turn to speak, he stood with his arm around Zara and addressed the crowd. 25 years ago, I married this woman in a simple ceremony with barely anyone in attendance. Some of you probably remember the gossip, the speculation about who she was and where she came from. But what mattered then and what matters now is this. She is the best person I have ever known, and loving her has been the greatest privilege of my life. Everything you see here, everything we have built, exists because I found her when she needed me most, and she stayed when I needed her most. That is what love does. It saves us and it sustains us. There was not a dry eye in the crowd when he finished. Zara kissed him, and their children embraced them, and the party continued late into the night. As they lay in bed that night, exhausted but happy, Zara traced patterns on Garrett's chest. "Do you remember the first night we spent together? Our wedding night, of course. I was so nervous, I had no idea what I was doing." "Neither did I, really. We figured it out, though." "We certainly did," she laughed softly. "All those children are proof enough of that. Best education I ever received." She swatted his shoulder playfully, then grew serious. "I need you to know something. No matter what happens, no matter how much time we have left, these years with you have been the greatest gift. You gave me a life I never dreamed I could have. You gave me love and safety and a family. You gave me everything. You gave me just as much, more probably. I was just existing before you. You taught me how to live." They fell asleep holding each other, two people who had found salvation in an act of compassion and built an empire of love from that single moment of connection. The years rolled on, bringing the inevitable changes of time. Garrett's health continued to decline slowly, but he remained active and engaged with the ranch operations as much as his body allowed. Zara developed some health issues of her own, but nothing that diminished her spirit or her devotion to her family. In 1908, on a crisp autumn morning much like the one 30 years earlier when he had found her, Garrett woke feeling strange. His chest was tight, his breathing labored. Zara immediately sent for the doctor, but they both knew what was happening. Garrett was 70 years old and his heart was giving out. Their children gathered quickly, filling the house with their presence. Garrett held court from his bed, dispensing wisdom and love in equal measure, making sure each child and grandchild knew how much they were loved. But it was Zara he kept coming back to, holding her hand, refusing to let go. "Do not leave me," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I need you." "You do not need me," he said gently. "You are the strongest person I know. You will be fine." "That does not mean I want to do it without you. I know. I do not want to leave you either, but we knew this day would come eventually." He squeezed her hand with what little strength he had left. "I love you, Zara. Finding you was the best thing I ever did. Loving you has been my life's greatest joy. I love you too, so much. That morning when I saw you on those church steps, I knew you were going to change everything. I just did not know how much." He smiled, his eyes growing distant. "Best decision I ever made, bringing you home." "This is your home," you said, "and you were right. You gave me everything. We gave each other everything." Those were his last words. He slipped away peacefully, surrounded by the family they had created together, holding the hand of the woman who had transformed his life. Zara grieved deeply, as anyone would after losing their partner of 30 years. But she did not break. She had survived too much, come too far to crumble now. She wore black for a year, as was proper, but she continued to live, to engage with her family, to find meaning in each day. She lived another 12 years, watching her grandchildren grow and have children of their own. She told them stories about their grandfather, about the cowboy who had found a desperate girl and given her the world. She made sure they understood the power of compassion, the way one act of kindness could ripple outward and change everything. Rose, who had inherited her mother's artistic talent, painted a portrait of Garrett and Zara from their wedding day, working from their descriptions since photographs had been rare back then. It hung in the main house, a reminder to all the Xavier descendants of where they had come from. In the spring of 1920, Zara passed away peacefully in her sleep at the age of 63. She was buried next to Garrett on a hill overlooking the ranch, under a cottonwood tree they had planted together 40 years earlier. The funeral was massive, attended by hundreds of people whose lives had been touched by the Xaviers in some way. Gabriel, now in his early 40s and patriarch of the family, stood at his mother's grave and told the story one more time. The story of how his father had found his mother sleeping on church steps, how he had carried her to his bed and told her it was her home, how that single act of compassion had created a dynasty of love that would extend for generations. They saved each other, Gabriel concluded, echoing his mother's words. That is what love does. It saves us and sustains us and gives us reason to keep going. My parents understood that better than anyone I have ever known. May we all be so lucky to find that kind of love in our own lives. The Xavier Ranch continued to thrive, passed down through generations, each one adding their own chapter to the story. But it all traced back to that spring morning in 1878, when a cowboy named Garrett Xavier found a desperate girl named Zara Richardson sleeping on church steps, and made a choice that would echo through time. He had carried her to his bed, given her his home, and in doing so had found his own salvation. Together, they had built something remarkable, something lasting, something that proved the transformative power of compassion and love. Their story became legend in Silver City and beyond, told and retold, a reminder that sometimes the most important thing we can do is see someone who needs help and offer them everything we have. And in the end, that was exactly what they had done for each other. They had offered everything, held nothing back, and created a love story for the ages.